Welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and today is my ranking of the movies I saw in July. So, this is part of an ongoing monthly series in which I rank the films I saw for the first time in theaters for that month. So, in total, for the month of July, I saw 15 new releases in theaters. And I have to tell you, this was a really good month. I struggled putting these films into a ranking. There were so many movies this month that I just really liked. So as usual, this is just my opinion. This is just my ranking on how I connected with, how I enjoyed watching the films that I saw this past month. So we have 15 films to get through. Let's not waste any more time. Coming in at number 15 is Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. I know that this probably is not going to be dead last on most other people's lists, critics included. It's just not for me. This is not my film franchise. I actually liked this one less than I liked the first one, and I didn't like the first one all that much. As I mentioned in my review, it just felt like a huge brick of cheese being smashed down upon my head. The singing, I guess, was marginally better in this film, and some of the story aspects themselves were a little bit more sophisticated, and I think that ending scene, that ending connection actually rang true, and it was fun to see Cher having fun in this film. Of course, Christine Baranski was wonderful as always, but there was just no subtlety to be had. It was so over the top, so in your face, and so cheesy that I couldn't stomach it. Not to mention, a couple of people who are big Mamma Mia fans have since pointed out to me that they completely pretty much threw the whole first film out the window, and none of the storylines are consistent with what they said in the first film. So they didn't even stick to the backstory that they had created and just came up with something completely new, and so that's why I have it at last. At number 14, I have Skyscraper. I thought the trailers for this film looked horrible, and I don't think the film was all that much better. The script was just such a hot mess that I couldn't get past it. Some of the action is fun enough. The Rock is a believable action star, and it was nice seeing Neve Campbell do something again. But we didn't even get like fun, charismatic Rock. Mostly because the film took itself so seriously, it thought it actually was the next Die Hard film, when in fact, it should have just embraced its cheesiness. At least Mamma Mia did that, right? The edge of your seat moments when they really use the height of the building to build tension is what elevates this up above Mamma Mia, but really, the script was horrible. The effects waned in and out of being good-ish, and the characters were all just kind of like, been there, done that, seen it done way better. At number 13, I have Unfriended, The Dark Web. I thought this was a pretty alright little horror thriller that used its gimmick to pretty solid effect. Unfriended, The Dark Web takes the gimmick of that first film, but roots it in a more real and a more grounded setting. Now, the dialogue in this film is absolutely horrible. The acting performances aren't all that good either, but it was a very interesting concept, and thankfully I saw the good ending, in which I think it actually ended up being a fairly solid ending, one that made you think and actually was pretty ironically horrific. And we have these big inconsistencies where people basically have magic powers to do things on the internet or disrupt the frequency of video that they would have no way of ever doing. And as I said, the script problems, the acting problems, those all keep it down at number 13, but I don't think this was a horrible film by any means. I think it was pretty alright. At number 12, I have The Equalizer 2. Across the board, I think that this is just a solid film. I think it is perfectly fine in every single aspect, other than maybe acting performances, which I think are a little above just fine. But it doesn't reach any of the heights that the first film has. It didn't have any of the grit, any of the darkness, any of the weight that that first film had. Ultimately, it just kind of came across as a forgettable sequel. After you've been away from it for about a week, I kind of had forgotten that I had watched it. Denzel gives a great performance as he did in the first film. There are some awesome, gruesome action sequences that I definitely had fun with, and I enjoyed the little bit of thriller mixed in. This movie kind of just feels a bit hollow and devolves into this predictable, stereotypical action film by the third act. And I think the third act really hurts this film overall, and that's kind of why it's all the way down at number 12. At number 11, I have The First Purge. Call it my guilty pleasure franchise, or call it whatever you want, really, but I liked The First Purge. This is actually probably my second favorite within the series. I know some people think that the political aspects are too in your face, but that's what this series has become. An action film with political overtones that mix in elements of gore and horror. And that's exactly what The First Purge delivered. That's what I wanted going in, and that's what it gave me. And I think that the political aspects are all very much relevant, and I think they're well incorporated into a scenario that may seem way out of whack for some people, and grounded into 2018 America, to be honest. So I liked The First Purge. I think it was pretty kick-ass overall. I had a fun time. And these aren't great films by any means. That's why it's all the way down at number 11. But, I enjoyed myself with The First Purge over these other films. So at number 10, I have Whitney. Whitney was a very sad watching experience. It just makes you sad. And I don't think there's any other way around it. You just get sad watching this beautiful, immensely talented woman and what her life was by the end. And just all is a bit sad. There are some revelations in here, in particular one about sexual abuse that has since, of course, caused controversy amongst the family. And I will say that I think it is the best Whitney Houston story we have seen done. We've seen quite a few of these since her death, and they've all just been pretty terrible overall. And this one was definitely solid. It was competently made, it was well done, and I think it both paid respect to Whitney while also telling the facts of it all. So I think it's just a solid documentary, but in a year of great documentaries, it just falls a little bit short in that aspect. Plus, I would have liked to see more from Bobby Brown, and in particular, honestly, Miss Cissy Houston. I think I would have really liked to hear more from her, and it would be nice to see someone get her to let her walls down a little bit. And they definitely let her off the hook, which I understand. It is about her daughter, but we don't even see her in the second half of the film. But it's a solid documentary. That's why it's at number 10. At number 9, I have Hotel Transylvania 3 Summer Vacation. I thought this was a pretty fun, pretty funny animated film, and a nice third entry into what honestly has no right to be as good of a franchise as it is. These Hotel Transylvania films are by far the best work Adam Sandler is touching in this decade. The animation looked much better for the most part. In this film, I thought the world building was really inventive, and there are some nice sight gags to be had in this film. Of course, the story's predictable, and of course, we get really horrible potty humor here, but it doesn't overtake the film as a whole. So I just think it's a solid, good animated film, and that's good enough for number 9. At number 8, I have Teen Titans Go to the Movies, the other animated film I saw this month, and my favorite of the two. I thought this movie was really funny. I think it was much funnier than Hotel Transylvania, and that's why it's ranked above it. It took me off guard completely. I wasn't expecting to like this movie at all. Who knows, maybe that's because the internet told me I shouldn't like this movie. But those trailers really were nothing to write home about. But I thought this movie was much smarter than I ever imagined it would be. And it did meta humor so well. I think it was so self-aware that it's infectious. It's hard not to walk out of this laughing and thinking, all right, that was a pretty fun hour and a half to spend at the movie theater. Now, this also does have some really stupid, gross humor that I was like, ugh. And a very predictable plot. But I had a good time watching Teen Titans Go to the movies. So, number 8 it is. Number 7, I have Ant-Man and the Wasp. I don't think this is quite as good as the first film, mostly because I don't think it's as funny as the first film. However, it definitely steps up in the action department, and that largely has to do with the Wasp. She is awesome, she is badass, and she was everything I'd hoped she would be. And gave the Ant-Man series a nice kick in the butt when it came to competent action heroes. But Ant-Man and the Wasp falls in at number 7, which is pretty much right at the middle ground of the month, because it was a perfectly solid, perfectly fine MCU entry. I don't think it was really fantastic in any department, but I don't think it was horrible. I thought it had one great post-credit scene and one terrible post-credit scene that was given away in the trailers. I was entertained, I had fun, I enjoyed myself as I watched it, and then I moved on. So, number 7 for Ant-Man and the Wasp. At number 6, I have Sorry to Bother You. I absolutely love this film. For 2 acts of it, I think it is fantastic, actually. And I even like a lot of what that 3rd act does as well, but that 3rd act is definitely what keeps it from moving into top 5 material. But this was such a smart, well-written, funny satire on America, basically, but on capitalism in particular, as well as race relations. I think everything it did regarding capitalism, even in the going over the top, was fantastic. And obviously, everything it did to showcase what Black America has to go through in everyday life that often is overlooked was fantastic. I think it just jumps off that cliff at the end too hard. It really takes a running jump off at the end. And it gets too crazy, too outrageous, and goes for too much shock value by the end of the film that it loses the core message just a bit. Again, I know why it did that, and I get the symbolism when it comes to both how Black people are viewed, how poor people are viewed, and how far we're willing to accept things in the name of money. But it was just too much, and I think it did a disservice to the overall message of what the film was trying to say. But still, a really smart film with really great writing and really great messages that is mostly done very well. At number 5, I have Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot. This film used non-linear storytelling, probably the most effectively I've seen done this year. I thought it was fantastic how this movie used its storytelling devices. Joaquin Phoenix and Jonah Hill both turn in a couple of the best performances of the entire year so far, and this is really funny. I laughed a lot watching this film. And by the end, I think it was just profound enough and just emotional enough that it stuck with me. And it stuck with me a bit after a lot of the films a little bit lower down on this list. Now, I do think it does have some problems with pacing, in particular that whole middle section, and feeling a little bit repetitive, a little bit like we're going through the same motions, and a little bit on the likability factor of our main character. And that's what keeps it from moving even further up, but I do think this was a very, very good film. At number 4, I have 8th Grade. This was a fantastic film about the awkwardness, the social anxiety of being an 8th grader and being a slightly anxious, socially awkward 8th grader at that. I think it just perfectly captured that time frame, and that's the magic that this film holds. It doesn't tell some big story, it doesn't get over its head. I think it just tells the story it needs to tell, and it does it so effectively. Maybe even more effectively, probably more effectively than any other film regarding this age frame. Anchored by a really good directing job as well as a wonderful lead performance. I think 8th Grade is a wonderful slice of life type of movie. Now, my biggest problem still does remain the sexual aspects of this film. And honestly, having a male writer-director writing about sexual awakening of an 8th grade girl, it will continue to strike me as strange. And I guess we won't know until a female writer-director makes a film about a girl coming to this point. But I really do struggle to wonder if a female writer-director would have even included this like blowjob mess in a film about an 8th grade girl. If that had been left out, I think this film would be dang near perfect and could have been applied to both male or female. And then the gender of the director doesn't even matter. But they included it, and that's what keeps it out of my personal top 3. At number 3, I have Mission Impossible Fallout. I must admit, I'm not quite on the, bullet train of hype that this film has received since its release. Clearly, I really enjoyed it. It's all the way up at number 3 for me on the month of July. I'm gonna say I don't think it's the best action film of the decade, and I think you're going to be sorely disappointed if you're expecting Best Director and Best Picture nominations, because Mad Max was able to get them, because I do think Mad Max brought a whole new level of art that I didn't quite get from this Mission Impossible film. But as a pure spectacle of wall-to-wall action, I mean, it's amazing. That is pretty much undeniable. This has some of the best action set pieces I've ever seen in a film. And when it comes to individual sets and action scenes, it's undeniably one of the best action movies of all time. Tom Cruise continues to be great. Rebecca Ferguson is just so lovely in these films. I'm glad that she's a continuing character. Henry Cavill was amazing in this movie. Simon Pegg, the whole cast was really great. The visuals were fantastic. And it is edge of your seat exhilarating from the very beginning all the way through to those end credits. It is a gas pedal to the floor, wall-to-wall action extraordinaire, if you will. However, I do find it to be predictable. I think it goes for twists and turns, but you see them coming from quite a bit off. And not every movie needs to have something to say, but this film really didn't have anything bubbling under the surface. So as a pure action spectacle, amazing. At number 2, I have Leave No Trace. I did not expect to love this film as much as I did. This was a quiet, beautiful little movie about a man and his daughter that deals with so many issues that you don't even see coming. The obvious one, homelessness. But the main one, PTSD and how it affects other people around you. We delve into the government. We delve into, again, another film that really touches on child care and where is that line between abuse and neglect and just a different approach toward parenting and raising your kid. All of our characters in this film are fantastic. I think they are all sympathetic to a point. You understand all of these characters, even when you don't agree with them. And our leads give amazing performances. Both these leads are just wonderful. It's a beautifully shot film. The cinematography is absolutely stunning. The script is amazing. I think the directing in this film is beautiful. And there's not much to say about the film because it is so quiet, it is so contained, but it still has so much to say. So it's such a weird experience trying to talk about the film. So just go see it and you'll understand why I have it all the way up at number 2. My number 1 favorite film from July 2018 is Blind Spotting. Now, I will admit, the first part of this film I was actually just a bit nervous. And watching the trailers for this movie, I wasn't sure how I felt. I was definitely intrigued. But I was like, oh gosh, what tone is this movie? And the tone takes a minute to settle into. But once you do, this is a tour de force film, in my opinion. I think this was a fantastic movie about race relations. And, much like Sorry to Bother You, also deals with capitalism. But this one is definitely more about race. Race and where you grew up. But this film does it through and through extremely effectively. Of course, we set up this idea of police brutality, which, as we know, is a very topical point of discussion. But what I think this film touches on that you don't see films touch on, I don't know if ever we've seen a film touch on it this well, certainly, is race relations when you're both from the same place. And how differently everything affects two people, came from the same block, went to the same schools, but don't happen to be the same race. And this film just did it so well and so impactfully that I was just sitting there. Actually, my mind was blown by the end of the film. There is a scene at the end of this film with rapping and a confrontation that I literally almost held my breath through the entire thing. I was about to pass out because I couldn't breathe. I was just like so enthralled with what it is that I was watching. The writing, the directing, everything about this film, the performances. I just think this is a wonderful movie, top to bottom, and that's why I have it ranked at my number 1. So if it is open near you, please go see this. I know I didn't review it. I saw it after it came out, but it is a spectacular movie with so many great things to say, and I think it communicates all of that in a way that is effective to the audience. So please seek it out. It's my favorite movie that I saw in July. So that is my July 2018 ranking. Let me know what you thought of how I ranked these films, as well as share your own ranking. I want to know what your favorite film is from the month of July. So leave those rankings, leave your thoughts, all of that in the comment section down below, or you can hit me up on Twitter. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you are always up to date on our latest videos. And if you do like these ranking videos, hit that like button. I love you all so much for your support. Mwah! Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!